shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries, and I want to welcome you to Tuesday's edition of End of the Age. I hope you're having a great day. It's beautiful here in Texas. I don't know where you're at, but it's almost, I think it's a little over 70 degrees here, and it's in January. I don't understand that, but I am thankful for great weather because I know February could get pretty nasty, and it has before. So I do want to welcome you to the program this afternoon, and I know that a lot of us can get caught up in the news and really what's going on. You're getting hit from every side. There was a riot here. This happened. That happened. Little things that try to take your mind off of really what's going on in the world. And I want to keep you, kind of focus you back in today on the big picture. What's going on a global scale? Now, it's not bad to focus on things going on in your own community and things like that. Obviously, we all do that. However, it's also good to kind of step back every once in a while and look at the grand scheme, the big picture. What's really going on in the world? And really, from our perspective, according to the prophecies of the Bible. Now, one of the most recognizable prophecies that we will see in the end time, of course there's many of them. We know about the final 7 years and everything that happens along that time period. But during that time, one of the most recognizable prophecies is a world government. And that's what I'm going to talk about today and kind of give you focus you back in on the big picture. We're all going to step back from what we're hearing in our local news and different things, and we're going to look globally. What's really going on? Talk a little bit about Donald Trump and see what's going on with him, perhaps from an elitist viewpoint. And the world government, the establishment will say, how do they view Donald Trump? So let's talk about it. Let's talk about world government. So many of you that watch this program or listen to us or watch us on television, you know that the Bible prophesies a world government. The two most famous prophecy books in the Bible, Daniel and the book of Revelation, they clearly prophesy a world government for the very near future. Now, it has been being established for many decades now, but we will see the culmination of that, where that world government will have teeth and be ran by the Antichrist in just the near future. All the way back in Daniel, 2,500 years ago, in Daniel chapter 7, verse 23, it talks about the world government in this way. It says, "Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, shall tread it down, and break it in pieces." So this passage refers to the last day dictator, you would know him as the Antichrist, who will rule the world just before the second coming of the real Christ, Jesus Christ, to the earth. Daniel 7:24 through 27 clearly states that this world government will continue up until the return of Jesus Christ, when the kingdom of God will be established. Jesus will tear down human government, set up His government here on earth. Then, 650 years later, Revelation chapter 13, verse 7, John wrote of the Antichrist and his one world government, "And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds, tongues, and nations," or an international system. Revelation 13:5 even tells how long the world government will continue. How long it's been being established for for many decades now. But when the Antichrist takes authority over that and rules that world government with an iron fist, the Bible tells us that, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. So this 42-month period refers to the time of the Great Tribulation. The Great Tribulation is only the final 3.5 years of the final 7 years, culminating with the second coming of Jesus Christ to the earth. So my question to you today is, many of you have heard about the establishment or the elite, the globalist, liberal internationalist who believe in a one world government. They are the ones in the earth today trying to establish this world government, the very world government prophesied in Scripture to be in power and ruled by the Antichrist just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. Now, a lot of times we'll get the question, do these people know specifically what they're doing? Do they believe the prophecy of the Bible? They probably don't understand that they're fulfilling prophecy. They have an elitist mentality, and they believe that they know how to run your life better than you do. And so they are, many of them are trying to do away with war on the earth, this, that, and the other. And they believe a world government where all the nations of the earth yield up their sovereignty and answer to this one world governing body. They believe that's the answer. So that's the question. When I say the establishment, I'm not just talking about the establishment that is controlling the United States. That's just an arm of the world governing body. I'm talking about the establishment, not only that, but the global establishment and all of these leaders that are these elitists that are trying to establish a world governing body. What do they believe? Well, we would refer to them as globalist. The globalists believe that the nation state has outlived its usefulness. The United States is a nation state. They've outlived their usefulness. National sovereignty has become the problem, according to them, and a system of world government is the only solution. The reasoning goes like this. History shows that sovereign nations inevitably, sooner or later, come into conflict. They're trying to protect their own territory, whatever. So when those conflicts can't be worked out through diplomacy, nations then obviously they go to war. Well, weapons of mass destruction have become so powerful that mankind now has the ability to destroy itself, actually many times over. Therefore, these elitists or these globalists, they feel that war must be eliminated, really even outlawed, to the point where they would do away with the nation states and all of their armies, and they would all yield their sovereignty to this one world governing body. And they feel really is the only way to do this, eliminate the nations, tear down the borders, and disband all the national armies. So that way they couldn't, because in their mind they're trying to do away with war on earth. There's really an ulterior motive, but on the surface this is what they'll tell you. And place all arms under a global authority, thus making war impossible. So when a dispute arises among states, they can take their issues before the United Nations, which is the current establishment of a world government, the United Nations, presenting their cases before the UN Security Council. All nations would then agree to abide by the decisions of the global authority, thus eliminating war forever. Now, this is what the elitist or the globalist, liberal internationalist, those that are striving for a world government, this is what is going through their mind. Since all national armies will have been disbanded and the only army left will be under the control of this global authority or this world government, all nations will have no choice but to submit the decisions of the world to the world government. So that's what they believe. The problem is, think about the establishment, the true establishment of a one world government where China, Russia, South America, Africa, the United States, Canada, we would all yield up our sovereignty to a one world governing body. Imagine the power and the control that entity would have. Well, as a result of that, get that thinking through your mind just for a second. And I want to ask you one really uncomfortable question. All these plans really sound pretty good. I mean, a one world government, if we could do away with war, I would be for that. Am I for doing away with the nation state? No. But I'm for doing away with war on earth, obviously. War is terrible. And so all of these plans sound pretty good on the surface until we ask the one uncomfortable question. Imagine the power that they would have. What would happen if, let's say, Adolf Hitler should gain control over the only army that is left? Imagine. You'd have to obey his every whim. The world's checks and balances have been destroyed at that point. And consequently, the world will be subjected to the worst tyranny history has ever known. Now that's if an Adolf Hitler got control of this world governing body. Promoters of globalism argue that this kind of scenario, that'll never happen. However, the Bible clearly prophesies that is exactly what is going to happen as soon as the planned one world government becomes strong enough to dominate the world. The problem is that only the world leader is not going to be Adolf Hitler. It's going to be someone much worse than Adolf Hitler. Now, I know that's hard to swallow, but this is what the Bible says. The Bible says there's going to be a time of great tribulation like there's never been before, nor will there ever be again after that. The Bible calls this individual the beast, Revelation chapter 13, or the Antichrist. So the only thing standing between mankind and the emergence of this planned New World Order or this liberal international order, as it's being called today, is really right now the United States of America and the American people's love for their national sovereignty. Think about that. On the earth today, really, we're the only ones. The United States of America is the only one standing between this and the full realization of a global government in the earth today. We're the last bastion of freedom on the earth, even though many things have happened that we don't like. Many aspects of socialism have came into this country, a lot of different things. However, we still are the greatest nation on the face of the earth, which I thank God for. And it looks like we may be making kind of a turn towards God, which I'm extremely thankful for. And that's why obviously God has kept His hands upon us up to this point. But the states of Europe, think about it, the European Union, the states of Europe have already surrendered their sovereignty. The 28 nations that make up the European Union, they've already surrendered their sovereignty to the EU. The leaders of the EU believe their European Union is only the first step to the coming global union. They know what their goal is. And so they've set up the European Union to kind of be like a model. And once they get that thing settled, then everybody's going to try to follow that. Well, think of it. The establishment here in America, they actually believe the same thing. That the European Union is that model, and once they get that thing all kind of worked out and all the bugs worked out of it, everybody's going to start mirroring that. And those nations, think about it. The goal is yield up their sovereignty. Those nations have yielded up their sovereignty to a central governing authority. And that's the model that the elitists want everybody to follow. So today, let's talk about world government and the global rise. You've heard the term in the news, populism. Of course, Pope Francis recently warned against populism. You say, well, what's populism? I know that you listen to the news and they throw these terms out there and just keep on going and you're like, what in the world was that? So sometimes your eyes kind of glaze over. Populism. What in the world's that? Well, populism is a political program or movement that champions the common person. Usually it's by favorable contrast with an elite. So you have the elitist that want to run everything, create a world government, and then you have the common man who's just trying to work, feed his family, go to church, serve God, or just feed his family and go fishing, whatever. They're not really worried about this global scale, this world government They're just trying to live their life. But then you have this elite that wants to rule everything and them. They're not settled for just this, a common lifestyle. And so populism usually combines elements of the left and the right, frequently being hostile to an established socialist or labor party. In other words, the populism is pretty much just for the common man. They're not really trying to take over people's businesses, this, that, and the other. All they want to do is live their lives. And populism is the belief that somebody can come along and say, hey, an individual, I'm for the common man. And I'm going to take the power from this elitist entity and I'm going to give it back for you, which will be a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Have you ever heard that? So let's talk about, let me give you some for instances here. So this article comes from Bloomberg, and it says that the Davos elite, the meeting, the World Economic Forum held in Davos, Switzerland, it states that the Davos elite seeks fixes to defend the system from populists or populism. So they're not for working for the common people, the common man. They believe in an elitist strategy where they're trying to establish this world governing body that we talked about, prophesied in Scripture. It's exactly what they're trying to do. So they're trying to defend the system from populists. And so the article states the great and the good of Davos, the World Economic Forum, they agree that they have a problem with populism. On the second day of the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in the Swiss Alps just a week or so ago, delegates disagreed on how best to address the upending and the Western political order. A debate made doubly urgent by the string of elections in Europe this year where anti-establishment, this is what they don't like. They don't like anti-establishment parties. They don't like populism, somebody who's for the common man. They want the establishment to be in control. And they don't like it, the fact that these anti-establishment parties could gain more control. Actually, hedge fund billionaire Ray Dalio warned that we may be at a point where globalization, or the move towards a world government, is ending, and provincialization and nationalization is taking hold. So nationalization would be keeping the nation state rather than doing away with it. And so these guys are scared about that. They don't want that. They want the elitists to be in control because they're trying to form a world government. Well, that leaves these technocrats at the Davos meeting, trying to patch together potentially expensive remedies to make the current system of global trade, banking, and business, that the links that the Davos Club represents, acceptable to the public at a time when newcomers like United States President Donald Trump, he threatens to dismantle it by scrapping trade deals and introducing tariffs. They do not like the fact that Trump comes along preaching populism. They don't like that because they're trying to establish a world government. But the United States is the wrench in the transmission of the thing. And so we're the only nation that really stands between them getting their true world governing body. So Dalio went on to say, I want to be loud and clear. He actually made this statement in Davos, Switzerland. I want to be loud and clear. Populism scares me. What are they scared of? Well, right now, they're scared of Donald Trump. Donald Trump, the President of the United States. He actually shared his populist vision in his inaugural address with confidence. And he signaled this from the start in one of his most memorable lines. If you can remember his speech, he said, today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C. and giving it back to you, the people. This is populism. And this is what these global elites are worried about, that he will take the power from the establishment in Washington, D.C. and in the United States and give it back to the people where it belongs. So you say, well, what does President Trump mean by that? Well, it means that he's defying the establishment or the ruling elite, who would try to yield up more and more sovereignty of the United States sovereignty to the global governing system of the United Nations and other international governing entities. And they've already done a lot of this. And with signing us on to the Sustainable Development Goals, a lot of different ways, they've already made efforts to yield up our sovereignty to these global governing entities. And so that's why these people they're actually saying, we're afraid of what Donald Trump's going to do, because he's trying to take the power back from the establishment and give it to the people. And they don't like that. You say, well, the establishment, the world government, that's what we're talking about today. The prophesied world government that will be on the earth and in power at the second coming of Jesus Christ. So the ruling elite, which are primarily made up of, in the United States, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Federal Reserve Bank, the Brookings Institution, and that's just 3 of them, among many others, are all part of the establishment who believe in the process of globalization, which would, again, do away with the nation state. It's very important, because this was one of the big issues in the campaign. Doing away with borders and building walls. That was one of the biggest issues. That was really one of the main issues that really the whole campaign turned on, was the process of moving towards globalization or away. And so what it does, it creates a global community. Doing away with borders creates a global community that answers to the one world governing institution. So you say, well, why are they fixated so much on President Trump? They would actually call him out. They talk about, I've got so many quotes. I put it in a huge article and I think it was in the last magazine, about why they're so fixated on Trump and what he's doing in opposition to the process of globalization. Well, here's the deal. He's absolutely against the process of globalization or the move towards a world government. Let me run that, just make sure you understand that. The current president of the United States of America, the most powerful nation on earth, is diametrically opposed to the process of globalization or moving us into a one world government. And the Bible actually states that the United States, America, will not be involved in the world governing body in the last days. Can you see how prophecy is being fulfilled in such intricate detail? It prophesies of a world government. There's a world government being established. It prophesies the United States won't be a part of that we're going to pull out of that and won't be a part of that world governing body in the last days. And look at what's happening in the current political climate globally. There's a world government being established, and we've got the President of the United States of America that's saying, I don't want anything to do with that. So, really, Trump promised this during his campaign, or during his one of his final speeches. He said the most important, I think this was his acceptance speech, the most important difference between our plan and that of our opponents is that our plan will put America first. Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo. It's very, very important. He was saying right in the face of the international community, we're putting America first. They don't want one nation above another nation. That's what wealth redistribution and all that's all about, is equaling out the playing field between all the nations. They don't want one nation having all the power. They want a world government. They want the nations yielding up their sovereignty to this one world governing body. So really, look at what's happened. After only a couple days in office, he's already made moves in this direction. He signed a memorandum Monday that made moves to pull the United States out of the proposed Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Pact. And obviously, which would pull us further into that one world governing body. And the previous administration was pushing us in that direction. Trump said, nope, pulling us out of that. Trump wants to build a wall, which is diametrically opposed to the process of globalization and the international community. Trump is putting America first. Go to the White House website and read about the Trump administration's plans and policies to put America first. Now, the global elites, they don't want America first. They want the world government first. Remember, they're trying to do away with all the nation states and get all them to yield up their sovereignty to a one world governing body. But if you go to the White House, you can see the current administration's moves to put America first. You can see the America First energy plan, the America First foreign policy, a plan to bring, and then you'll see the plan to bring back jobs and growth to the American workers, which he's been working on. He's had many of the huge corporations there trying to build jobs in America in his first 2 days, almost 3 days now. They've got a plan to make America's military strong again. Well, like I said, people that believe in a world government, they don't want individual militaries built up. They want militaries to dissipate and them have the only military on earth. The current administration is saying, hey, we're going to make America's military strong again. They've also put a plan together to pull the United States out of or renegotiate existing trade deals such as the Trans-Pacific Partnership and NAFTA, which really has resulted in blue-collar towns and cities watching their factories close and good-paying jobs move out of the country or even overseas. And so Donald Trump, in his first 3 days in office, is fighting against this process of globalization, doing away with the nation state and equaling out the playing field between all the states and yielding up their sovereignty to a one world governing body. Now, if you'd like to watch the rest of this program, the last 30 minutes, join us at endtime.com, where you can see this aired live every day from 3 to 4 Central Time. And so again, that's endtime.com to watch the rest of this program, and we'll get into several speeches letting us know we're heading into a one world governing body in the end time.
From Here to Armageddon, a new exciting 8-lesson series to share with your friends and family. Order yours right away.
Answering many questions like, how far are we from the Battle of Armageddon? What will happen between now and then? Where are we on the timeline? Your questions answered in this exciting 8-lesson series, From Here to Armageddon.
Go to endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-END-TIME, 1-800-363-8463. Order yours right away.
Most people have dreamed of someday walking on the ground where Jesus walked over 2,000 years ago. You don't want to wait any longer. Make this the year for your life-changing experience. Judy and I would like to invite you to join us for our 2017 Spring End Time Prophecy Tour. This is a 14-day trip to Israel and Rome. Please join us to experience the greatest place on earth, the Promised Land, with an added bonus, Rome, Italy. Start making your plans right now and join us April 30th through May 13th of 2017. We're going to have a wonderful time.
Call now to reserve your place today at 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the Watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the Archives button.
You know, everyone, I just heard the commercial there for our tour. We take a tour twice a year to Israel, and sometimes we'll tag on a European trip or a Rome trip and things like that. Different places we'll tag onto that and go to places. Sometimes we go just to Israel. If you've never been overseas, if you've never been to the Promised Land, stood on the Temple Mount, go to some of these different places with a prophecy minister like Irvin Baxter, you need to take the trip. And it's really cool because this spring we're going to be going to Israel and Rome. And so you need to go with us. If you've never been, you need to call and sign up. It's a great trip. And we would have a great time. And I've had pastors tell me, Dave, after going on this trip with you guys, I'll never preach the same again. Because my whole life I've read the Bible in black and white. But having been there and stood in the different places, walked down through the Kidron Valley or the Valley of Jehoshaphat where the Battle of Armageddon is going to culminate, stood on the Mount of Olives and understood these stories, man, I've got so much more of an in-color view of everything, and it really brings the Bible to life. So I would put a plug in, an additional plug for the tour. Irvin will be going in the spring. I'll be going with them, my wife Jana, Irvin's wife Judy, and it's such a great time, and we'd like to really fill up 2 buses. I think they've got 30 or 35 people, but if you'd like to go with us, man, it's such a great time, and it's 2 weeks overseas, and really for the cost, it's really not that much for a 2-week vacation overseas for all that we cram into there, and then there's Rome as well. So if you'd like to go, I'll give another plug for our tour. It's such an awesome experience. People's lives have changed forever. I went the first time in 1999, and we still have personal friends from that 99 trip. And I've got personal friends from every trip I've ever been on. I've been many times. And so if you'd like to go with us, we have great conversations. Irvin's with us the whole time. And so it's a great time. And if you ever have thought about going, go with us in the spring. Put in for your vacation this time of year and go with us. Call and talk to Jana or Holly and schedule your trip to go. It's a great time. So, getting back to talking about world government and kind of really what's going on with Donald Trump and some different things. The elite, when we say elite, we're talking about globalists, people who believe in a one world government, whether it is on a national level, like let's say here in the United States, like I said, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Brookings Institute, some of these different institutions that are of the establishment here in the United States, that's on a national level. And then there's an international level, but they're all working for the same goal. You have the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the International Criminal Court. All of these institutions are designed to govern the world. And so when I say the elite on today's program, I'm talking about the elite on every national scale, the elite, the federal banks and different things, and the elite on a global scale. So the elite, liberal internationalist, or those that are endeavoring to establish a world government, they view President Trump as the leader of the free world as very detrimental to their efforts to establish a one world governing body. They are feeling the backlash and the resentment of people that know they are being drawn into a world governing system where they will be governed by the policies created by the United Nations and other international managing institutions. Consider this, the Sustainable Development Goals. Those are goals that are put out by the United Nations to transform the world. That's the actual title of this plan, Transforming the World by the year 2030. Would be, 13 years now or something like that? And so consequently, they're really, I mean, they've really pushed us off in there. And all the nations of the earth, 193 nations, unanimously signed on to and committed to implementing the Sustainable Development Goals in their nations. President Obama signed the United Nations onto that, and they've started trying to implement some of those goals. Those are goals handed down from the current world governing establishment, the United Nations. And so you say, well, we signed a Declaration of Independence, not interdependence. I totally agree with you. However, we have had people at the very top that wanted to force us into this one world governing body. They believe they are part of the establishment. They believe in a one world governing body, and so they wanted to pull the United States into that. But remember what prophecy says. I can prove scripturally the United States will not be part of this one world governing body in the end time. And so then, look, here it is. We are in 2017. They're pushing for this one world government. And then here comes President Trump, who is saying, I'm against that. That is a good thing. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. We don't want to be part of that world governing body. Imagine this. When the Lord comes back, He's tearing down the world government. He's going to tear down that institution and destroy it and set up His kingdom here on earth. So consequently, you do not want to be part of that world governing system. And so that's why it's important that we understand what Donald Trump is doing, standing in the face of the international community to protect Israel and to build up the United States of America. That's a good thing. We want to be a lighthouse to the world during the turbulent times that are just ahead. So it's a very good thing. Now, the United Nations, very quickly. The United Nations, established in 1945, was established to be a socialistic one world governing body. The current charter for the United Nations was written by a convicted communist spy, Alger Hiss. Not one word of that charter has ever changed. So the United Nations is still functioning under a socialistic one world governing charter. And so if you wonder about the United Nations, which is currently where the move towards a one world governing body and a governing entity on earth today, then that's the United Nations. So now you understand why the United Nations and Donald Trump are at loggerheads, because he's opposed to almost everything that they're for. And so consequently, and with Israel, the United Nations just didn't stab Israel in the back with the Resolution 2334 signed 2 days before Christmas, and which making it them actually occupying the Jews in East Jerusalem and in the West Bank, saying that they were illegal to be out in there and to establish their presence there. The United Nations didn't stab them in the back. They stabbed them in the front. They just said, hey, here's what we're going to do. President Obama and his administration withheld our veto, the UN Security Council veto, and we allowed that to happen, setting the stage really for the Battle of Armageddon. That's why the nations of the world will come down against Israel to battle at the Battle of Armageddon, because of that resolution right there, and Israel's not going to abide by that. So it's a good thing that President Trump would stand in the face of the international community and stand with Israel all the way to the Battle of Armageddon. Of course, that's what the Bible says is going to happen with America. So I'm very thankful to be in this land right now where we still have our freedoms to worship God and to speak freely. So let's talk about what we say. Well, what really happened? What's going on the world stage? Well, I listened to a speech the other day, parts of the speech by Joe Biden, speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, where a lot of these guys were saying, hey, we're scared of Trump. We need to figure out what to do with Trump. What do we do? The United States perhaps might pull out of this. What are we going to do? Well, he made a speech in Davos warning of the collapse of the world order. Now, when I say world order or new world order, in this speech, we're talking about world government. In this speech, Joe Biden refers to it as the liberal international order. It's the same thing. It's world government, new world order, the process of globalization. Call it whatever you want. But in this speech, he calls it liberal international order. So I want to read some of the speech because it's very key, because he is trying to say, hey, there's people that are coming against this liberal international order that we've tried to set up for years, and we need to protect it. And I want to show you on the program today that this world governing body, there are the elites, the globalists, they call themselves elites. I don't call them elites. I'll call them globalists because they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like I do. So I call them elites because that's what they're known as, but we'll call them globalists, those that believe in a world government. But in this speech, he refers to the world government, as the liberal international order. And he starts out like this, and I want to read some excerpts from this because you need to understand really what these guys are doing. I'm talking about the Davos, Switzerland, the World Economic Forum. He gave this speech and talking about that there were people in the world coming against our world order, our liberal international order that we're trying to establish. He states, this year, now this is Joe Biden, this year in these early days of 2017, There's a palpable uncertainty about the state of our world. For the members of the media in the audience, I want to make it clear that I'm not referring to the imminent transition of power in my country. There will be a new president. He gave this 2 days before President Trump was inaugurated. So he's saying in a couple days there will be a new president of the United States. But the challenges we face and the choices we must make as an international community, when you see the term international community, think world government, do not hinge exclusively on Washington's leadership. For the past 7 decades, or when the United Nations was established, the choices we have made, particularly in the United States and our allies in Europe, have steered our world down a clear path towards a world government. I'm placing towards a world government in there because that's what they're doing. After World War II, we drew a line under centuries of conflict and took steps to bend the arc of history in a more just direction. Instead of resigning ourselves to ceaseless wars, we built institutions, i.e. the United Nations, and alliances to advance our shared security. Instead of punishing former enemies, we invested billions in helping them rebuild. Instead of sorting the world into winners and losers, we outlined universal values or world governing values that defined a better future for all of our children. Now, all of this sounds great up to this point, until you know the background of the whole thing. He goes on to say, our careful attention to the building of building and sustaining a liberal international order, or in other words, a world government, with the United States and Europe at its core, was the bedrock of the success the world enjoyed in the second half of the 20th century. So he's saying that because the elite in this country wanted a world government, that the world government they're trying to establish, they're working for several decades now. The United States and the EU was at the core of that. Now you see the problem they have with Donald Trump. You wonder why the international community and all these liberals and different things are screaming at Donald Trump, because he's standing in the face of the international community and saying, we're not going to have that anymore. Why am I talking about it today on a prophecy program? Because this is the world government they're trying to establish is the world government of the end time prophesied in Daniel chapter 7 and Revelation chapter 13. So we need to talk about it. It's what's going on. I'm sitting here on January 24th, 2017. And all of this stuff is happening as we speak. So we've got to talk about it. When we come back from the break, I'll continue on down through. I want to give you a few more instances of what Joe Biden said in his speech at the Economic Forum in Davos.
If ever people need to hear the unvarnished truth, it is now. There are some subjects that are not politically correct to talk about, but they're urgent. That's why I'm grateful for Endtime magazine. If you're not a subscriber, you're missing information that will really impact your life. Endtime has a bi-monthly magazine that explains how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. You can get a 2-year subscription for only $29. You can also get a bulk subscription and pass them out to your church. We have gotten reports that Endtime magazine has caused spiritual awakenings in churches when they see the prophecies being fulfilled right now. You can start your own ministry and leave them in doctors' offices, libraries, laundromats. You never know if you might be responsible for saving someone who is searching for the unvarnished truth. That's what the magazine did in my life. Call 1-800-363-8463. That's 1-800-ENDTIME and get your subscription today.
Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm going to try to get through a lot of this speech. It's very, very important that you understand the international community, elitists, the world governing members that are trying to establish a world government. They're scared to death of Donald Trump. There's articles out there that say they are scared of Donald Trump and what he's trying to do, and moves in Europe to break off of Europe, this rise of populism in the world today, or taking power back from the establishment and giving to the common man. They're scared to death of that, especially the most powerful nation on earth, the United States. And so it's very important that we understand really what's going on, because this is tying in intricately with Bible prophecy. We're watching the ongoing fulfillment of this prophecy as we speak. So his speech goes on to say, Joe Biden says at the World Economic Forum in Davos, he states, a community of democracies that to this day serves as the fulcrum for our common security and for our capacity to address the world's most pressing challenges is at hand. Strengthening these values that have served our community of nations, international community, world government so well. For so long is paramount to retaining these positions of leadership Western nations enjoy and preserving the progress we have made together. But in recent years, it has become evident that the consensus upholding this system is facing incredible and increasing pressures from both within and without. They realize that there are people that are coming against this global governing system they're trying to establish, and they don't like that. They want to just dictate, and that's not how it's working today. He goes on to state, today I'd like to speak to the sources of those pressures and about why it is imperative that we act, get this, that we act urgently to defend the liberal international order or the world government. So he's saying, I'm going to talk about the pressures that are coming against us and why we urgently need to defend our efforts towards this world governing body or the world government that we've already set up. Here in this exclusive Alpine Tower in Davos, Switzerland, where CEOs of multinational corporations rub elbows with leaders of nations, it is easy to embrace the intellectual benefits of a more open and integrated world. But it is our own peril that we ignore or dismiss the legitimate fears. Now get this, they actually use the term fears and anxieties that exist in communities all across the developed world. The concern mothers and fathers feel about losing their factory jobs that has always allowed them to provide their families. Well, if the elite are supposedly running the show, why are these people losing their jobs? It's a question we need to ask. He goes on to state, parents who don't believe, in other words, they say they have the solutions. Why are all these people losing their jobs? It's called the process of globalization. Parents who don't believe that they can give their children a better life than the one they have. These are the pressures that are undermining support for the liberal international order or the world government from inside. He goes on to state, globalization has not been an unallied good. It has deepened the rift between those racing ahead at the top and those struggling to hang on in the middle or falling to the bottom. Radical jihadists not only recruit and find haven in the ungoverned deserts of Iraq and Syria, they do the same in the ungoverned spaces of the internet. Borders seem less real. That is not a good thing. I would agree with him there. Borders do seem less real. Terrorist attacks feel inescapable. Fears are about unrelenting migration mount as people continue to flee violence and deprivation in their homelands. And in the wake of these understandable fears, we have seen a series of alarming responses. Get this. Now, they're talking right at Trump here. Popular movements on both the left and the right have demonstrated a dangerous willingness to revert to political small-mindedness and to the same nationalist protectionist. Nationalist, I'm a nationalist. I believe in the United States of America. We signed a Declaration of Independence. I want to help other nations on earth, but I don't think we should be dictated to do that. So Joe Biden, get this, the Vice President of the United States at that time was saying that we need to fend off this nationalism and protectionist. Even though we signed a Declaration of Independence, do you see the mindset that's going on here? These guys don't care about the Declaration of Independence. They'd like to make a paper airplane of that and throw it in the fire. And isolate. Now, they can say that they do, but at the end of the day, you listen to what people say and then you watch what they do. And that's how you can get the truth. And isolationist agendas that led the world to consume itself in war in the last century. As we have seen time and again throughout history, demagogues and autocrats have emerged seeking to capitalize on people's insecurities. Okay, Trump stood at his inaugural and said, in his inauguration and said, I'm going to take the power from Washington, D.C. and give it back to the people. I don't think he's trying to capitalize on people's insecurities. I think he's simply wanting to give their voice back. And that's why Christians came out en masse, because they finally thought, hey, I perhaps might have a voice in this election. And so, moving on through Joe Biden's speech, I could talk about that for a while. In this case, using Islamophobic, anti-Semitic, and xenophobic rhetoric to stroke fear, sow division, and advance their own narrow agendas. The Declaration of Independence in the United States is not my own narrow agenda. It's not Donald Trump's narrow agenda. Our forefathers signed that as an effort to come out from under the tyranny of King George. I kind of believe that we should stick with that and not do away with that. And so maybe I'm the only one. I don't think I am. Just kidding. This is a politics at odds with our values, and not all of our values, but with the elitist, the globalist values, and with the vision that built and sustains, get this, the liberal international order or world government. And he goes on to state the impulse to hunker down, shut the gates, build walls. Who's been preaching about building walls lately? President Trump. And exit at this moment is precisely the wrong answer. Now, we're talking about the previous Vice President of the United States talking about against the ideas of the current President of the United States. These guys were both right under Obama, he was at the highest level in the United States. But yet he believed that we shouldn't build a wall. Now you understand the difference between the campaign that was just ran. One individual said, we don't need to build walls. We need to tear down our borders, open borders, let everybody come in. One individual, President Trump, said, we're going to build a wall. And so he's wanting to protect the borders. You don't have a nation unless you have protected borders. And so consequently, anybody could come in. And so that's what the globalists, the elitists, they want to do away with the nation state. He goes on to say it offers a false sense of security in an interconnected world. Notice how many times I've said liberal international order. It's world government, folks. That's what these people are pushing. Somebody's coming against that and they don't like it. And so Joe Biden, his whole speech was devoted to the possible deterioration of the world order, or that there are pressures coming against that. What are we going to do about it? We need to protect it. He goes on to state, it will not resolve the root causes of these fears, and it risks eroding from the inside out of the foundations of the very system that spawned the West's historically unprecedented success. We need to tap into the big-heartedness that conceived the Marshall Plan, the foresight that planned a Bretton Woods, and the audacity that proposed a United Nations, or the world government. That one sentence right there encompasses a virtual internationalist delight of the New World Order, the world government. Those institutions were designed to help govern the world. And he's saying that we need to protect these institutions. We need to get back there with the mindset that people had when they developed these efforts to govern the world. He goes on to say, we cannot rout fear with entrenchment. Rather, this is the moment to lead boldly and recommit ourselves to our common principles, which remain essential to my nation and to liberal democracies the world over. So, of course, he's talking about world government. Every time in that speech, when I talked about liberal international order, it's world government, world government, world government. I think in the speech he made that statement 8 times in like a 2,300 word speech, which is huge. And he's talking about the deterioration, people coming against this world governing body. So, of course, now that we've talked about world government, there are those who do not share this vision for the world. Those who wish to dissolve, as far as the vision for the world that we would see, those who wish to dissolve the community of democracies and are supporting institutions in favor of a more parochial international order, people that don't share what we believe in as nationalism, there's people that are against that. Therefore, they are for where power rules and spheres of influence lock in divides among nations. They're trying to establish a world government. We hear these voices in the West, but the greatest threats on this front spring from the distinct illiberalism of external actors who equate their success with a fracturing of the, get it again, liberal international order. It's world government, time after time. They're doing everything they can to protect the world government that they have established. And that in the next few years, we know is going to come to power, to full power, and it'll be ruled by the Antichrist. That's why it's so important that we understand the prophecies of the Bible, because the United States is not prophesied to be in this world government. So with the time I have left, let me see if I can summarize all this up, because I want to make sure you get it before we get off the program today. It's very, very important. The Bible prophesies a world governing body that will be established in the end time just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. And they've had several efforts at it. If you understand, after World War I, they had the League of Nations. Of course, that failed. Then they said, well, hey, maybe the World War I crisis wasn't big enough. We need a bigger crisis. Here comes World War II. On the heels of that crisis, the United Nations was established. And for the last 70 plus years now, they've been marching towards this one world governing body. The Bible says that in the last days, just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ, that there will be a world government established that will be ruled by the Antichrist. And that it gives specific nations in Revelation chapter 13 of who would be involved in that world governing body. The United States, if you understand Daniel 7 and the eagle's wings are not mentioned in that body. So the United States, it appears, has pulled out of that world governing body for some reason or another. We don't know specifically how it'll work, but we're not going to be involved in that world governing body in the end time. And so I wanted to come to you today because there are huge moves on right now towards this world government, to the establishment of this world government. And when you look at what President Trump is doing, just within the first couple, 2 or 3 days of his presidency, he's making huge moves to pull us out of that, with pulling us out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership and wanting to build a wall and all these different things that he's doing. He's standing in the face of this world government, this international order that Joe Biden was speaking about at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. So it's so awesome to watch how the prophecies of the Bible are written, and then sit back on January 24th, 2017, and watch them come to pass in intricate detail. I hope you've got something from today's program. Thank you.
End of the Age is a production of Endtime Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. Endtime Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.